Hello children, welcome back. So in our last session we discussed that the verb of a sentence can be in active voice or it can also be in passive voice, isn't that? And we also understood in detail what is active voice and what is passive voice. So in this session we will be discussing how to convert sentences from active voice to passive voice. But before that, let us take a quick recapitulation of what is active and what is passive voice, right? So, in active voice, the subject is there, verb is there, object is there. So, this is the basic structure. But in passive voice, the same thing, subject, verb, object. But what is the difference? In active voice, the performer is at the subject's place and the receiver is at the object's place. But in passive voice, the receiver is at the subject's place and the performer is at the object's place. Right? Now let us see this with the help of an example. I help my friend. Now this sentence is in active voice. Why is it in active voice? Because the subject is the performer, right? The performer who's performing the action, who's doing the action is at the subject's place and whoever is receiving the action is at the object's place, right? So who's the receiver here? My friend. I am performing and who's receiving the action? My friend. Okay. So this sentence, the verb in this sentence is said to be in active voice. Now the passive voice of this same sentence, my friend is helped by me. So now why is this in passive voice? Because the receiver is at the subject's place and the performer is at the object's place, right? So the receiver of the active voice becomes the subject, the object who's the receiver in active voice becomes the subject in passive voice, okay? And the performer at the subject's place goes to the object's place in the passive voice. So I hope all of you are very clear with active and passive voice. Now, in our previous session, when we talked about tense, we read that a verb tense states not only the time but also the state of the verb, isn't it? So, we are going to discuss how active voice can be changed into passive voice depending upon different tense forms, right? So let's start. So let's start with the simple present tense. Let's see the sentence. He writes poems. So he here is the subject. He is the performer of the sentence and is at the subject's place. And poems is the receiver of the sentence, receiver of the action rather. And where is it placed? It's placed at the object's place. So this is active voice. The verb is said to be in active voice. Now when changed into passive voice, poems are written by him. So poems here, who's the receiver, becomes the subject of the sentence and the performer, who's the subject of active voice, becomes the object of passive voice, right? So the sentence in passive voice will be poems are written by him. Now let us focus on the tense form. Here the verb is in simple present tense. So in such cases, when we change it into passive voice, the helping verb is there. The helping verb gets added in present form and the past participle form of the verb. That is the third form of the verb. So what is the basic structure? Is, am, are depending upon the subject plus past participle form of verb. So this is how we change sentences from active voice to passive voice if the verb is in simple present tense. Now let us see what do we do in simple past tense. If the verb is in simple past tense, so the sentence would become he wrote poems, right? Now he wrote poems. Here in this case the sentence, the verb of this sentence is in simple past. So when changing it into passive voice, we'll simply change the helping verb, right? So poems were written by him. So simply the helping verb changes, right? Poems were written by him. So what is the basic structure? Was or were depending upon the subject plus the past participle form of verb. So this is how we change sentences from active voice to passive voice when the verb is in simple past tense. Now let us take a look at the simple future tense. How do we change sentences from active to passive? Now in this sentence, he will write poems. Here the verb is in simple future tense. Will write is simple future tense. Now when we change it into passive voice, what do we do? Poems will be written by him. So will be is there and then the past participle form of verb, right? So what is the basic structure? Will be or shall be plus the past participle form of verb. So this is the case when the verb is in simple future tense, right? Moving on to the next tense form, that is the present continuous tense. So in this sentence, he is writing poems. Here the verb is in present continuous tense. And which voice is it? Yes, it's active voice. Now when we change it into passive voice, here where the verb is in present continuous tense, it becomes are being written. Okay, so the sentence is poems are being written by him. So what is the basic structure of passive voice? Sentence in passive voice, if the verb is in present continuous tense, it's is, am or are depending upon the subject plus being plus past participle form of verb. Let's see the sentence once again. Are is there because here the subject is a plural number. Okay, so poems are being written. Are is used, the helping verb are is there, then being gets added, and then the third form, that is the past participle form of verb. So this is how we convert active voice into passive voice if the verb is in present continuous tense. Now let's see the same case with past continuous tense. So the sentence is he was writing poems, right? Here the verb is in past continuous tense. Now how do we change? Poems were being written by him. So were being written. So see the basic structure, was or were is there, the helping verb, and then being is there, and then the past participle form of verb, right? So he was writing poems changes to poems were being written by him. So I hope this much is clear to everyone. So this is the, this is how we change active into passive voice if the verb here is in present continuous tense and here past continuous tense. Now let us proceed further, but before that let me tell you that the sentences cannot be expressed into passive voice. I repeat, the sentences or the verbs cannot be expressed in passive voice if the verb is in future continuous tense, right? Future continuous tense cannot be converted, cannot be expressed into passive voice. Clear? So now let's proceed with other tense forms. So now moving on to the perfect tense form, starting with present perfect tense. Let's see the sentence. He has written poems. So here has written, this is present perfect tense. And which voice is it? Yes, it's active voice. Now how do we change it into passive voice? Has written becomes have been written, right? Now have again depends upon the subject, right? So poems have been written by him. So what is the basic structure? Has or have depending upon the subject. Then been gets added and then the past participle form of verb, right? Has and have represents present perfect tense. Clear? Now, same case with past perfect tense. He had written poems. So here had written, the verb is in past perfect tense, right? So he had written poems. This is active voice. Now how do we change it into passive voice? Had written becomes had been written. So the sentence goes as poems had been written by him, right? So had been written in past perfect tense in which voice? Yes, of course, in passive voice. So what is the basic structure here? Had plus been plus past participle form of verb. I hope present perfect and past perfect is clear to everyone. Now let us proceed to future perfect tense. He will have written poems. Now this sentence is in active voice, and which tense form is it? I mean the verb is in which tense form? Yes, it's in future perfect tense. Will have written. The verb is in future perfect. Now how do we change it into passive voice? Poems will have been written by him. So will have been written. Will have written becomes will have been written in the passive form, right? So what is the basic structure? Will or shall, then have plus been plus the past participle form of verb, right? So I hope this much is clear to all of you. Children, in all the different tense forms in passive voice, we saw that the verb takes its third form, right? The third form of verb, that is the past participle form of verb, is used. So I hope all of you are very clear with it. But before ending the session, let me remind you one more thing, very important thing. Verbs in active voice cannot be changed into passive voice if it is in future continuous tense, and there is also no passive form in perfect continuous tenses. That is present perfect continuous tense, past perfect continuous tense and future perfect continuous tense. These tense forms have no passive form, right? With this, I conclude my session. See you again in the next session with some other topic. Thank you, children.